Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hey everybody listening to Tales from the Fandom. This episode with Caitlin was recorded prior to San Diego Comic-Con and Harry Potter and the Cursed Child's release. So some of the topics that we cover during this podcast episode you'll notice are a little bit out of date since we recorded this back in July. I just wanted to make a note of that before you started to listen. Thanks and enjoy the episode. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's guest is Caitlin of ATheatrephileCosplay. Caitlin grew up in Texas and has lived in Los Angeles for the past 8 years. She's recently finished 2 master's degrees in business administration and theater management, and she works in theatrical education and outreach and business management for theater companies. Shockingly, she does have free time with all that going on, and she enjoys cosplay, Netflix binging, hanging out with friends, and cuddling her cat Minerva. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, Caitlin.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, amongst all your busy time, because I cannot believe, number one, 2 master's degrees, and working, and managing, that you have time for my podcast. So I greatly appreciate it.
For sure, of course.
So how would you describe fandom?
For me, I think fandom is about connection, both between people and then connecting with whatever the material is. I think that one person can like something and that's awesome, but I think what makes it become a fandom is when you get many people that like the same thing, that are finding ways to interact with each other, to communicate, and then to interact directly with whatever the material is, whether that's through, fan fiction and fan art, or going to conventions, or discussing shows or books online, or just finding a way to communicate with other people and then connect with and engage with the item in question in kind of a more intense way would be, I think, how I would say fandom.
All right. And what fandoms are you into?
Oh gosh, there are a lot. The big ones for me now, Harry Potter has always been my number one and will always be. I'm really into Game of Thrones. Marvel, Pokemon is another one that's been there for a while. Doctor Who. I consider myself a part of the Broadway fandom, even though most people don't really consider it to be a fandom. I think it is, because it fits the definition of what I just said, and so I'm really into that. A couple other kind of casual ones that I just watch. I watch Orange is the New Black. I really love that. Once Upon a Time, Sherlock. Disney is casual-ish. I really like Disney, but I'm not rabid about it anymore. And then I consider myself a casual Star Wars fan because I haven't really gotten into the extended universe, but I do really like the movies. So that one. Buffy and Angel were big when I was younger. Same with Firefly and Lost. Obviously, those shows aren't really around anymore, so it's a little less active. Mm-hmm. Although Buffy and Angel and actually Firefly are also kind of in the comic universe, so I've been keeping up with them that way. Supernatural, I've been a fan of for a while, but I'm kind of starting to be less satisfied with it at this point. And then the ones that I kind of gave up on eventually were Glee and then Grey's Anatomy. I used to be really into, and then Glee I watched all the way to the end. Grey's Anatomy I kind of gave up about 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh man, I was joking with a friend about Supernatural, and I was like, in 20 years, is that show still going to be going?
I got really into it, I think 4 years ago. One summer I watched like the first 7 or 8 seasons, just like all the way through. And then started watching it. And I feel like I got into the show right around the time that it started declining.
Right.
Because after, I watched them all on Netflix and whatever. And then after that, when I was watching it week by week, I just, and apparently a lot of the fandom tends to agree with me that, there have been some amazing episodes in the last couple of years. The musical episode was incredible. There were a couple really good ones this season, but overall it just feels like they're like dragging it out, I guess, just that they're kind of running out of I mean, once you've killed death or whatever, oh, sorry, spoilers. Uh,
Haha.
like there's really nowhere to go from there. And they've got God and angel. Well, they've had angels for a while, but once you make God a main character, you really can't like. There's nowhere to. You can't go up from that. So, it's. I'm interested to see what they do next season, but yeah, I feel like they're kind of running out of places to go at this point.
I had friends that watch it, still watch it today. I got into it just specifically when I found out Felicia Day was a character on there,
Yeah,
and I watched only her episodes,
yeah.
and
That
then
almost got. Well, okay. Are we spoilers? Are we no spoilers?
yeah, we can totally spoil
Okay. When they killed off Charlie, I almost stopped watching the show. That almost was the
that.
jump off point for me where I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing
You
this
know
anymore.
that like I only watched those episodes, and when I found out that spoiler about Charlie dying, I was like, I don't have any reason to watch it now.
I know a lot of people actually that did stop watching then. Either because they liked her character and because the show's kind of whatever, and then there are all kind of the social political implications of killing off one of the only recurring LGBT characters and the fact that they do kill women off a lot on that show. And so there was a lot of discussion um around Charlie's death, but I almost stopped. That almost kicked me off the train.
And you're still on it, but that
But
train is
yeah,
slowly
that
coming to
that
a.
train is slowing down. Yeah.
It's either slowing down or it's about to go off the
Yeah,
cliff.
we'll see.
So definitely a Harry Potter
Yeah.
fan. I have to admit, when I reached out to you, it was totally because of your Ginny Weasley cosplay.
That was actually, I had that outfit before I actually started quote unquote cosplaying because I bought it. I mean, I bought it in pieces. I had the tie and the sweater, and then I got the scarf later, and then I got the wand and, whatever. But I had it for years and years because I would wear it to, book releases and movie releases and stuff.
Right.
And I never really thought of it as being cosplay because it was just something I wore to, events and stuff. And then when I started cosplaying and I started my first official cosplay, which was Misty, then I was like, oh wait, I have this Ginny Weasley outfit too. And it just kind of became part of my cosplay rotation. But I've had that outfit for quite a while.
I think that's one of the easier ones that a lot of people do
Yeah.
to get their feet wet or just to have something fun or casual is definitely like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's super easy, black pants,
Mm.
the white shirt, the tie, and then you can just go on from
It
there.
is. And that's actually something that I tell people when they first start cosplaying. Because that I had that one and then my first with Misty, there it was really, I mean, just more pulling together of pieces than there was really any crafting required because it's a certain like outfit that she has to have, but it's all real clothes.
Right.
And so when people are talking about getting into cosplay, and I've had people say like, oh, well, I can't sew, I can't whatever. And I was like, get your feet wet, get something that you just have to buy an outfit for, see if you like it, and then worry about, trying to learn to sew.
Exactly. So how did you get into Harry Potter?
I do actually distinctly remember because I think I was either 9 or 10 because the first three books were already out and Prisoner of Azkaban came out in 99. So I would have been 9 or 10. I was at the library and I'd heard people talking about, the first three books. And there was this massive wait list at my school library to get the books because, everybody wanted them. And I happened to be in the library as someone was returning Sorcerer's Stone. And I was really good friends with the librarians because I spent like all of my free time in the library, because I'm a nerd and that's what I did. And so I managed to convince them to check the book out to me instead of whoever was next on the wait list.
That's awesome.
So I was, kind of cheating the system a little bit. But so I took Sorcerer's Stone home, read it in about, a night and a half, maybe 2 days, and then immediately, went out and well, I mean, I was like 10, so I'm sure my mom went out and bought all three books, and it was just kind of uphill from or downhill or everything. It was all just done at that point. It was all I talked about for ages, and then I started with when the fourth book got released. I went to the book release party, and I've been to release parties for every one of the books except for book six because I was in Europe with my parents when book 6 came out. Which actually, I love and hate telling this story. So my parents decided they wanted to go to Scotland when this summer that the 6th book was going to come out, and I couldn't. It was during the time when the exchange rate was so bad that everything cost like double what it actually cost. So buying the book in Edinburgh would have cost, it was like 35 pounds or euros or whatever the currency was then, and it would have been the equivalent of like $70. And so I
Right.
was like, okay, I'll just wait until I get back to the US. Well, J.K. Rowling, is from Scotland, and so they had all of this, all this stuff going on for the release of Half-Blood Prince, and I was hearing all this stuff. And then the day the book came out, the front page of the newspaper was this big article on Half-Blood Prince, and they had little summaries of all of
Oh
the
no.
books. And the summary for the 6th book was printed upside down. And I was kind of like, okay, haha. Like I assumed it was going to be kind of just like an overall summary, and they didn't want to spoil, the general plot line, but I still figured it was going to be a very general overview because they wouldn't actually publish spoilers the day the book came out. So I was like, okay, well, I just want to get like a little taste of, maybe what the plot is, because I'm not going to be able to read it for 2 weeks until I get back to the US. So I flipped the newspaper over. Lo and behold, like 2 sentences, finds, I don't remember what the actual summary was, but this happens, and Snape kills Dumbledore. Published on the front page of the newspaper the day the book came out. I cried for like half an hour.
Oh my goodness.
So I was so upset. And then as soon as we got back, we flew from Edinburgh to New York and then back to Texas. And as soon as we hit the airport in New York, I ran to a bookstore, bought the book, and then just spent the next like 5 hours just sitting there reading it.
Oh my goodness.
But
That is
yeah, it
crazy.
was quite a blow.
I was in Japan at the time when that book came out, Half-Blood Prince, and I had to pay, I don't know what it was, I think it's almost like $100
Yeah,
for the book.
it's not a good
And
time
but
to
it
be.
was well worth it.
It
It
was,
was well worth
yeah.
it. Dang, spoilers. I
Right?
mean, I remember watching on YouTube when they'd be like, "Oh, here we are spoiling people in
Oh
line,"
yeah, the drive-by
and
spoilers.
people would be driving
Yeah.
by doing the spoilers.
Why do
And
you have to ruin people's fun? Let
I
people
don't
have
know,
fun.
but you know what ruined it for me is I was waiting in line for book 7,
Mhm.
whatever, I can't even remember, Deathly
Yeah.
Hallows. So I'm waiting in line, and I'm not like the first one. I'm probably like 50 people back in the Walmart. And the first people that get the book flip to the end,
No.
and you can see like they're cheering and they're like, saying yay, or
Why
they're
would
they're
you
just
do like you're
expressing like
ruining
positive
the
emotion.
entire why would you do
And
that?
exactly, like that something good happened, because I'm thinking going into the 7th book, like Harry is going to sacrifice himself. That was my whole
I mean,
thing,
you
is
weren't wrong, but
Harry's going to die so that way he can take out Voldemort and everyone else can like have a better life.
hmm
And I knew right then that that was not to be. Like my theory had been
yeah.
blown
Well,
away, and
technically
that
you
was
were
it.
right. Just, not
Just not
permanently.
permanent. Yeah, just not
Yeah.
permanently.
No, I just don't get because I mean, yeah, you're ruining it for people around you, but you're ruining it for you. Like, why would you want to, I don't understand that.
Exactly.
I don't understand that. But no, but
So
yeah, so I all the book parties and then I dressed up for all the movies and I actually I had tickets to go see Cursed Child in London
what?
this week. The tickets were for like last weekend, I think. And they went on sale in like January or something. And I got up at like 4 in the morning and sat online for like 2 hours and bought these 2 tickets. And I was like, I have no way of knowing if I'm going to get to London or not. I don't know, because I graduated in May. So I was like, I don't know what my job situation is going to be. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I know these tickets are going to be sold out forever. So I'm going to get the tickets now and then figure it out. And it got to about April and I realized that there was no way I was going to make it to London. Um,
Oh
but
no.
I had a friend who was a huge Harry Potter, fanatic who was going to be in London anyway for Star Wars Celebration this week. And so
Okay.
I sent her a little message and I was like, hey, do you want these tickets? And she freaked out and ended up buying them from me. And so she got to go and, was super excited. So I did pre-order the script, so I should be getting the script sometime next month. But
Oh, that is awesome.
yeah, it's like Harry Potter and theater. Are you kidding me?
That's wild.
Yeah.
Like I've heard of people doing things like that, but I've never talked to anyone where they just buy something and are like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll find a way to do
Yeah,
it.
well, and the thing is that the tickets, I mean, it was, I think because it's, it does it in two parts. There's like a matinee and then an evening.
Right?
Um, I think total for matinee and evening, the tickets were $30.
What?
So I bought two. I bought, and then the person I was going to go with paid me back for his ticket. But so it was like 60, with the exchange and whatever. I think it was something, it ended up being like $70 for two tickets for both,
That
things.
that
Like,
is not bad.
I was like, I'll either find someone who'll buy them from me, which I did, or it's like, or I'll just eat 70, but it's not the end of the world.
Right.
And I know, I mean, it's sold out until like 2018 now or whatever, so it was worth it. And she was just, over the moon about being able to go. So it all worked out, but I still haven't seen it. Someday. It's gonna
Someday.
run for years, so
Hopefully they'll record it and release it on like a DVD or maybe in like the
right.
movie theater.
Yeah. We'll do like a live performance or something.
So what house are you?
I am a Gryffindor.
Have you always been a
I have always
Gryffindor?
been a Gryffindor, and I was actually very worried when, every quiz I've taken, everything was always Gryffindor. And it always sucks a little bit when you tell people you're a Gryffindor because they assume it's just like, oh, well, because, like Harry is a Gryffindor, everyone wants to be a Gryffindor. It's like, no, but really, like I actually am. But when Pottermore came out, I was nervous because I'd been identifying as a Gryffindor for so long and I had the whole outfit and all this stuff. And I was like, what if I get something else? Like, what if I have to change everything that I think I know about myself? And so I waited for like 3 days. I finally took the quiz at like 3 in the morning. This was in college, so I was, in my friend's apartment taking this quiz at like 3 a.m. And I like the noise that I made when I got Gryffindor. I like legitimately screamed because I was like, yes, I was right. It was fine. And then, so it has been confirmed. I am officially a Gryffindor, but yeah, I'm very much a Gryffindor.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I started off when I was younger, definitely Ravenclaw,
Mm,
but at that point I was in college, so
right.
it is definitely, I'm studying. I'm totally identifying Ravenclaw, but I'm a Hufflepuff,
Okay.
lifelong now.
Yeah.
So, who is your favorite character of the Harry Potter universe?
um. Well, Ginny is definitely my favorite in terms of the character that I relate most closely to. I've always really loved her character. I love the way that she's not afraid to stand up for herself and for her friends, and she's kind of not so much in the movies. I love Bonnie Wright, but they did not give her much to work with.
Right.
I adore the actress, but I'm really not a fan of movie Ginny. But book Ginny is like smart and she's sassy and she's got her life together and she knows what she's doing and she's just great. And the ginger connection, it's a hard one to shake too. It's weird if you look at like my list of favorite characters. I don't do it intentionally, but I tend to gravitate towards female characters with red hair. Uh, just this weird like subconscious thing that happens. But yeah, so Ginny would be my favorite. On the other side of it, I also always kind of had a thing for Draco. I always kind of thought he was a fun character to think about in the sense that especially in the later books. I mean, in the earlier books, because, the first three books are Harry's 11, 12, 13. So it's a little more simplistic. It's these are my friends and this is the bad guy and this is, it's more kind of black and white. And then as you get into the later books, it gets a little bit more complicated, as he grows up and whatever. But I really always was intrigued by the situation with Draco, and the fact that in the first couple books, it's, he's the bully and he's the bad guy, and that's just it. And then as it gets older, it's, well, you have to think about, the parental influence and what people are forced to do for the people that they care about, and whether or not he's really acting of his own volition, and kind of the effects that being in a war situation can
Mm-hmm.
have on someone who's growing up who ends up on the wrong side of things. And so I always thought his character was kind of intriguing. Um, I kind of part of me was hoping there'd be a little redemption at the end for him. And there wasn't really, but I guess kind of. He never went full evil. He kind of towed the line and got out when he could. So
Right.
yeah, but I always really liked his character.
Yeah. I mean, I think at some level there is like he has that little bit of it.
Hmm.
I think if they followed, or if they obviously the stories about Harry Potter and his side,
Hmm.
if they had dipped into like Draco on that side, as far as like either through extra material or even like the epilogue in the books. I mean, obviously Draco has a son.
Right.
I'm sure there's something that has happened.
Right. I'm kind of hoping. I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure that he's a character in Cursed Child. I think I saw that. So I'm interested to see. I mean, obviously the story isn't going to focus on him, but I'm interested to see if that gives any insight into what he's been up to, or what he ended up doing with his life.
Mm-hmm. That would be very nice to see. I think that's one of the things where I've liked when J.K. Rowling has published additional
Yeah.
material that focuses on different characters, or even just gives a little bit like snippets of like, hey, this is what has happened to X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
and it gives you that extra expansion.
Right.
Obviously, there's great fan fiction out there, and you're like, oh, this is so wonderful and great, but it's
It's
not
not canon. Yeah.
right. It's not canon. It's not official.
Yeah, that was actually, I think my favorite thing that I mean, she's posted, a ton of stuff and it's all very cool. I think my favorite thing that she's posted kind of in the Pottermore verse, was the backstory for McGonagall.
Hmm.
Because that's another character that I really, really like, as evidenced by the fact that my cat's name is Minerva. Uh, she's entirely named after Minerva McGonagall. So learning about kind of where she was coming from before she was, Professor McGonagall, I thought that backstory was really cool.
So you got your two favorites.
Hmm.
You got Ginny. You kind of got Draco. Is there a character that you root for, like an underrated character? That's someone that you're like, that one is cool. I wish there was more of. I really like that person.
Um, in some circles, I would say Ginny is underrated. I think more people who have been more influenced by the movies than the books tend to hate on Ginny. Uh,
Oh yeah, there's
so
definite Ginny
there's
hate from the
that. So I
movies.
think that is true because Ginny's the best and everyone else can just take a seat. Uh, I think before Neville became a badass, that
Hmm.
was, because we saw in the later books, when he kind of started standing up for himself and being awesome. And then in book 7, when he's just, chopping heads off snakes and whatnot. But before book 7 came out, when it was kind of like book 4, book 5, I was definitely rooting for Neville. And I don't know that I don't think people were hating on him really, but I don't think anyone really expected much out of him. And I think especially after book 5, when we got the prophecy and we found out that it was kind of a Harry or Neville situation, I was like, there's more that's going to happen with Neville here. Something else is coming. He's going to be more important than people are giving him credit for. So I don't know if I thought he was underrated, but I definitely thought he was being underestimated at the time, and then turned out to be right on that one.
Absolutely. I Neville is my favorite character.
He's great.
He was in the initial books all the way through. I really like the whole, whether it was Neville or Harry, like
Hmm.
plot twist kinda where, Voldemort made the choice and it became Harry over Neville.
Yeah.
But I love Neville, and I love Matthew Lewis, who got to play Neville,
Hmm.
because he really did go through that
Oh
transformation on
yeah.
the screen
Yeah.
too. I mean, he didn't get as much screen time as the others, but he got what he needed as far as the movies go. And I also think that his physical transformation kind of went along with
Right.
how the books kind of portrayed him too.
Yeah. I think so.
I love Neville Longbottom.
Yeah. He's a good one.
What's your favorite book?
Ooh. Um, I love all of them. That's the diplomatic answer. I don't know if I can pick a favorite in terms of like plot line or anything, because all of them are just very different. I will say that I have a hard time getting through book 5 most of the time because it's just, Harry Potter and the raging hormones. Um, although like that kind of is when the seeds of Harry and Ginny start, so that's always nice. But I think in terms of like if I had to pick a favorite, I would say book 4, A Goblet of Fire, not because of necessarily the plot, but because that was really the first book that got released after I was in the fandom. So that was the first one I went to a midnight release party for. That was the first one that I, stayed up all night reading and rereading and rereading. So that was the one I think that has kind of the deepest emotional connection for me because it was the first one that I really connected with on that kind of like deeper fan level.
I think for me, mine was always Prisoner of Azkaban because it's the one where it really seems like a lot of things start to build and start
Yeah.
to begin. I mean, book 1, everything's getting set up.
Mm-hmm.
Chamber of Secrets, that's always been out of all the books the one that I don't really like.
See, I always like Chamber of Secrets because it's the first book where Ginny matters. I mean, she matters by getting kidnapped, but still.
She matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because I know a lot of people that said book 3 was their favorite, like kind of, as a crowd favorite even, and that was actually one of the books that I didn't get into as much. And I don't really know. It's the same with the movies. That's probably my least favorite movie of the 8. Yeah.
Really?
I think also because it made me really angry. Because books 1 and 2 were, it was so because they were new, it was so intent on being really like word for word in a lot of cases close to the
Mm-hmm.
books. And book
Right.
3 was the first one where they kind of like they started to deviate a little bit. They weren't in robes, they were changing things up, and I remember being very very angry. And I kind of got over. I mean, they obviously they kept changing things, and so I learned to kind of enjoy the movies as their own thing and not as a connection to the books. And then it was a lot easier to
Right.
appreciate them. But I never really lost that kind of resentment on movie 3 for deviating from my beloved books.
I totally get that. I had a friend in college when the movies were coming out, and after every movie, there would always be some kind of, well, why didn't they include
Yeah.
this? Why didn't they include that? It's like, I really understand that you're in it kind of for like some of those smaller plot lines, but there's no
Yeah.
way that they're going to be able to put
There'd be
everything
45
into the book.
movies if they did all. The only
Like,
time really that I got upset, I mean, post Prisoner of Azkaban, but the only time I really got kind of annoyed with the way that they'd adapted it was Half Blood Prince, where they cut the entire battle at Hogwarts, which I know the rationale behind it being that there was a much bigger Battle of Hogwarts in Deathly Hallows Part 2, but still, they cut out all of the battle that happened at Hogwarts at the end of Book 6 and then blew up the burrow for no reason.
mm-hmm,
I was
yep.
like, well, if you're going to have a big fight scene, just do the one that's already in the book. But beyond that, I really didn't have an issue with much of the adaptation.
There is something. There's the Fantastic Beasts movie coming
Yes,
out this year, I
yes,
believe.
yes, yes.
Are you looking forward to it?
I am. I'm very excited. I think people are well, and I'll caveat this, but I think people are going to be disappointed with it because I think people are going in, even knowing that it's a prequel, I think people are going in expecting it to kind of somehow continue the story that they know. You've got a lot of people talking about like, oh, it's not over, it's not, it's gonna keep going. And I was like, I mean, it is. It's not, the Harry Potter universe isn't over, but I think if you're going into it expecting it to somehow be like directly connected to the Harry Potter series, people are going to be disappointed. Whereas I think the reason I'm so excited for it is that it's familiar and it's within this kind of magical universe, but it's this whole other thing. So it's not, it doesn't have to be connected to, the Harry Potter and the Hogwarts. It's just kind of expanding this universe beyond anything we've seen yet. So I'm excited
Absolutely.
for that, to kind of have an opportunity, especially as, an American, to have an opportunity to say like, okay, so how does this translate for us? What does this look like in America? Where is our college? Ilvermorny and all of that, and just expanding that universe. I'm really excited for. I hope more people start to think of it that way before the movie comes out, or else I think people are going to be unhappy. And I love Eddie Redmayne too, so you really can't go wrong.
I definitely have to agree. I mean, I'm one where I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, it's definitely not what Harry Potter was.
Right.
It's going to totally, it's not even like going to be in that same vein of, oh, they're in a school, they're in that school setting.
Right.
Here's what's going on. This one looks much different,
Mhm.
and I still don't even really know what the plot is
Yeah,
about
nobody does.
besides
Yeah,
him coming over and
like he
creatures have been released.
loses a magical creature or something. Yeah.
So I am looking forward to it. I know that or at least what's come out is that it's not just Eddie Redmayne. There is like a a supporting cast similar to like Ron, Hermione,
Right.
Neville,
Yeah.
Luna. That there are going to be those kind of characters, and that it's not just him.
Right. I have heard that. Yeah. I'm interested too to see what people, because I was thinking about, it's like, okay, well, my first thought was, oh, okay, well, when the movie released at the midnight release or whatever of the movie, I have an outfit, and I was like, okay, but I can't really wear Ginny to this, like, I mean, I can, and I probably will, unless I have something else built by then. But I'm interested to see if people, like, how people translate that fandom over for things like midnight releases and stuff. If people still do the Hogwarts thing, or if it becomes kind of its own sub not subculture, but subset of the fandom. If people
Right.
kind of specify it all.
Right. It's almost like Harry Potter cosplayers are going to have to wait and see, like,
Yeah.
if they go to like the new school, the Ilvermorny school,
Uh-huh.
what do they
Right.
wear, and start working on stuff like that,
Yeah.
where like it's almost equivalent to like the 501st Stormtrooper
Mhm.
cosplayers, where they have the original Stormtroopers or the clone
Right.
troopers or the now like the new stormtroopers that they've got, like the First Order stormtroopers,
Right.
and how each one is similar but different.
Yeah, the
And
attention to the 501st, like their attention to detail is just amazing.
yeah, there's definitely gonna be something coming out, I'm sure, for the Harry Potter groups, and be like, okay, well, this is like the standard for
Right.
if you're cosplaying Ilvermorny
Yeah.
students or people that exist in that universe over here.
Yeah. People will find, that's the one thing I've learned about cosplayers, is they will find a way.
So another fandom
Mhm.
that you're into, and one that has become very popular just recently
Mhm.
due to the latest giant app, Pokemon
Oh,
Go,
yes.
is
Yes.
Pokemon. And I will fully admit that when Pokemon came out in 1995 over here in America, I was in high school. So for you, how did you get into Pokemon? Is it something because was it something that you were watching during your like Saturday morning cartoons,
Um,
or
it wasn't Saturday morning. I was When Pokemon came out in America, I was starting elementary school. So so it was the kind of thing where like I would get home from school at 3:15 or whatever, and like Pokemon would start at 3:30, or I don't remember the times, but something like that. So I would
right?
get home, I'd get to watch Pokemon, and then I'd have to go do my homework or chores or whatever else.
So
But
you were their initial target audience, is what you're saying.
I was a child when Pokemon started here. And so that was kind of what I would do. Is I'd get home from school and I'd watch Pokemon, and then I'd go do whatever it was I was supposed to be doing. I actually got into the anime before I got into the games. Um,
Hmm.
I got my first, well, I don't remember what the actual chronology was, but my first handheld video game, I know that for sure. I think I had the N64 before I got my Game Boy Color, but my first handheld video game was Pokemon Yellow.
Oh, me
Um,
too.
so I started playing that, and then I had Silver, and then I didn't have an updated system for a really long time. And then in high school, I finally got a DS and got Heart Gold, which I actually pulled out a couple of weeks ago. Well, I pulled it out because Pokemon Go wasn't working, and I really wanted to play Pokemon. So I was like, well, I have my DS. So I've been doing a replay of Pokemon Heart Gold. I just beat the Elite Four last night. So that was exciting. But yeah, so I've played a little bit of the games as well. I mean, obviously I've played several of the games, and then I had a bunch of the N64. Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Snap,
Mm-hmm.
Hey You Pikachu, which I think I still have the microphone for somewhere. Should probably. Um, but yeah, so I got into the games as well, but it started with watching the show for me. And it's kind of a nostalgia. I will admit it's kind of a nostalgia fandom because I haven't kept up with it. I don't think I've actually watched an episode of Pokemon in like a number of years. And I keep meaning to because I know like they all went on Netflix for a while and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to sit down and like binge all of these, but grad school. So I
Right,
never
right.
did. But yeah, so I haven't really kept up. Once they left Kanto is about the time I stopped watching the show, which was forever ago. Um,
Yeah, that definitely is
yeah,
forever
so
ago.
it's more of a nostalgia thing for me. It's very much the original 150, and I'm familiar with with obviously the Gen 2 Pokemon because I did play Silver and Heart Gold. But for me, it's very much like the original 150, 151 if you're counting Mewtwo, and then yeah, the first couple of years of the series. But I think that's one of the things that's really exciting about keeping up with it. At least like in a nostalgia way, is that I also didn't realize that it was before Pokemon Go, but I didn't realize it was still a thing with kids, like at all. I thought it was kind of one of those things that was just kind of like, okay, well, whatever, it was a thing when I was a kid. And then when I was like 19 or 20, so I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, I was working at a summer camp and kids were bringing in Pokemon cards.
Yep.
And I was like, what is happening here? Because I mean, I had thousands of Pokemon cards. And I ended up actually bringing in all my old cards to camp one day and giving them away to the campers. And I was like the most popular counselor for the rest of camp. But yeah, kids were bringing in Pokemon cards, and I was like, I did not know this was still a thing. And also, I don't know who any of these Pokemon are. Uh,
Absolutely. I mean, I'm the same way because when it came out in 95, I got hired at a video store in 98 and I was kind of designated like, hey, we kind of need someone that can talk to kids about like their shows. I was already into like Disney and the animated movies and
Right.
whatever. I was like, okay, I'll watch some Pokemon so that way we can talk about it and rent these videotapes out.
Right.
And so I kind of got into it, and I got like the Pokemon Yellow game with Pikachu,
Yep.
and played that. And yeah, I mean, I watched primarily like the shows. I watched the first like couple movies that came out. Followed the games. Like I didn't pick up like any of the future games. I played like Pokemon Stadium on the 64, I
Right.
believe it
Yeah.
was, and that was really it. And then like the games were still coming out. Games are super popular. The series is super popular. They're still doing movies in Japan about Pokemon.
Right.
And yeah, like Pokemon cards start getting big. I have 3 kids that are under the age of 7,
Hmm.
and they transitioned from their like kiddie shows, and now I believe they were watching Pokemon this morning, and there's 2 seasons on
Yeah.
Netflix right now. There's the original Johto,
Hmm.
and then there's the new Pokemon XY, and I'm like, I have no idea who these Pokemon
Yeah.
are. I even have like I think it's Pokemon X or Pokemon Y for the
Hmm.
3DS, and I'm like, I still don't know any of these Pokemon.
Yeah, that was about when because I wanted to keep playing the games. And then actually this has kind of been one of the reasons why I don't consider gaming to be one of my hobbies. I mean, it kind of is like I still have my N64 and I play it constantly. And I have a couple other systems, but all of my systems are super outdated. Like I have an N64, a GameCube, a PS2, and a Wii. Not a Wii U, an actual like an old Wii, and then I have a
Yep.
DS, like the original DS, and that's about it. So I can't really like I enjoy gaming, but I don't really say like, oh yeah, I'm a gamer. because all of the games I'm playing are games that came out 15 years ago.
Oh, you're still a gamer.
But that's, so that's part of the reason why I didn't, honestly, until about 3 or 4 years ago, I thought the show was off the air. I didn't even realize that Pokemon was still a thing that you could watch on TV, which just tells you how with it I am in that sense. But I knew the game, like I knew when XY came out, all of the other like updated generations, like I knew they were happening and I was like, oh, I want to play this, but playing this would require me to buy a 3DS or this would require me to buy this and I can't, I'm in grad school, I can't do that right now.
Right.
My goal is to wait until, because I know when Sun and Moon come out, they're going to do a bundle with the 3DS because they always do. So I'm going to wait till that happens and then I'm going to get a 3DS and I'm going to get Sun or Moon. I haven't decided which one yet. And I'm going to jump back into the modern world of handheld gaming. Uh, but I'm very excited for that. That should be fun.
Do you have a favorite Pokemon?
Charmander is my favorite. Yeah. I like Charmander a lot. I also like Jigglypuff, but that's just because, she's pink and cute and whatever. Um, and she's really fun on the show because she like, draws on people and whatever. But I think Charmander is probably my favorite because he's
Okay.
also very cute. And then he turns into, a badass dragon. So
Exactly. My kids were playing. They play Pokemon Go for me. Like when I'm driving, I just hand the phone off
right.
to them so that way they can hit the Pokestops
Yeah.
and catch the Pokemon as we go. And this morning we got a Charmeleon,
Nice.
and then my middle son was like, we can't evolve him to Charizard because then he won't listen to us. And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't really think that's how the game
But
works.
that happened in the
But
show though.
it
That's
does happen in the
smart
show.
kid,
You
yeah.
have to be that gym, like that
Yeah, you have
level
to
of
have that.
Pokemon trainer or whatever. And
Yeah. No, I opened Pokemon Go a couple of days ago. I've been playing like fairly casually, mostly because I don't know if it's because I have an older phone. I'm still on
mhm.
like an iPhone, like the very first iPhone 5 that came out, or if it's just because my server data plan sucks or whatever. I don't know, but I have a very hard time getting onto the game. Once I'm on, I'm usually okay for like an hour or two before it freezes and cuts me out again. But getting logged on is rough for me. I mean, I know it's been rough for everybody, but I seem to be having more trouble than all the rest of my friends. But I got on a couple of days ago and I was like, getting out of bed and like changing out of my pajamas into regular clothes and just kind of like moving through my morning. And then I open up my app and it's showing there's a Charizard nearby. I do not think I have ever gotten dressed that quickly. Because I live across the street from a park and like a golf course and whatever else. And so I like, get dressed and haul it outside. And I'm like running around. There's like 20 people running around this park trying to find the Charizard. Nobody found it. I think we eventually figured out that it was probably on the golf course, which meant nobody could get to
Oh,
it. Which was very frustrating. But I mean, literally, there were 20 of us just running around this park trying to figure out where the heck this Charizard was. Had to
that's
teach
wild.
them.
I just saw a YouTube video. I haven't watched it yet of people that drove out to Area 51
Mm-hmm.
to drive around there to see what Pokemon were out there,
Right.
and they did say that there was a lot of unclaimed gyms,
Oh.
but then at some point they did get intercepted by the security that's out there.
Yeah, people have been joking that Mewtwo is eventually going to show up at Area 51. That's where that's going to happen. I was like, I don't know, but
I would
I've
hope
I've been
not.
having fun, and I've been. I mean, I tend to be fairly active. LA is very much a driving city,
Hmm.
which is as compared to DC or New York or Chicago or places where like public transit's kind of more of a thing.
Right.
We have public transit here, and I actually use it because I live about 45 minutes south of like LA proper. I live in Long Beach. Um, so if I need to go up into LA, I'll take the metro up instead. But there's always this kind of mindset that like if you can drive it, you drive it, and the only people that take the metro are people that can't drive for whatever reason.
Right.
Um, which I think is silly because it's usually way cheaper to take the metro, so I just do that anyway. But anyway, but I also really like if I'm going somewhere that's only 4 or 5 blocks away, I'll walk. and that's people always are like, why are you walking? And I was like, because I can, So I do that a little bit anyway, but I've definitely been walking more now that Pokemon Go is out. Like I've been walking, a mile or two a day just trying to catch Pokemon. So I think it's cool that it's getting people kind of out and I've been running into tons of other people that are playing and it's getting people out and getting them to socialize and be outside and just explore their community and all kinds of cool things are happening.
Absolutely. There's one artist that I follow, and she was like, "Here's my Fitbit information from the past
Oh
week," and
yeah.
it's like this steady, like this little stream of like walking maybe a mile or 2 miles, and then there's this huge spike, and she's like, "This is where Pokemon Go started," and I've walked 35 miles the past 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
Like, holy
Yeah.
cow.
It's pretty intense.
Our area here in our side of town of Orlando is a high Pidgey
Yep.
and Rattata
Same here.
and Zubat.
Yeah. I've got a lot of Pidgeys, a lot of Rattatas, a couple of Zubats. Magikarp. I have so many Magikarp.
Well, you might be one of the lucky ones that can eventually hit that 400
Oh my
Magikarp
gosh.
candy to get a
Maybe.
Gyarados.
We'll see. We will
That
see.
that's just I read like an article just about like that Pokemon and how it's almost like people who just if they aren't around a place where Magikarp spawn, that's going to be one of those things that happens like 3 years from now,
Yeah.
4 years from now.
Yeah. You just got to go farm some Magikarp.
Switching from Pokemon,
Mhm.
and we'll dive into a fandom that you and I both we talked about it before we started recording, and it's something that we both stuck with until the end. Uh, and and that is the show that was once mighty and powerful, and then it took a really hard fall at
Uh-huh.
the end. Was was Glee, the TV show on Fox,
Yep.
the little show that did, could, and then spectacularly,
Bombed. Yeah.
uh, kind of just like burned. I mean, until like the last few episodes. But how did you get into Glee?
Um, I actually, so I am a theater kid. I have always been a theater kid. I always will be. So I've always, I've done a lot of theater, like acting and directing and other stuff. And then I've always really been into musicals and everything. So when I first heard about the show, I was super, super excited. And then they actually, before Glee aired, so like it started airing in like the fall of whatever year that
Mm.
was. Um, like the May before that, they released the pilot online on
Right.
Hulu. So I watched the pilot like the day or two, within it coming out. And I was completely obsessed. I was like, this show's amazing. This is going to be so good. The music is fantastic and everything's clever. And I was so excited. So that was how I got into it is I don't remember how I found out about the pilot, but either someone said, "Hey, you should watch this," or I saw an ad for it, or whatever. But I was watching it from like that, from the get go, literally. Um, yeah, so that's how I got into it. It was the combination of finding out about it and then just being super interested in musicals and whatnot.
And who was your favorite character?
That's hard because I'm sure I had one when the show started, but by the time the show ended, I just wanted to punch everyone in the face. And so it's kind of now I'm like, I don't know, did I like any of them? I think in terms of who annoyed me the least over the entire show, probably Kurt. Um,
Okay.
he also had his moments that I was like, oh my God, you're being awful. But overall, I think he was probably one of the more positive characters that was there the whole time anyway. And I think also as a character, he was very important in terms of representation
Hmm.
and people, especially kids being able to see themselves on TV in a way that maybe they hadn't before. So in terms of like kind of the original characters, he was my favorite. I was and am a huge Darren Criss fan and have been since, the days of a Harry Potter musical.
Right.
So I was a fan of his before he was on Glee. So when he joined Glee, Blaine very quickly became one of my favorite characters just because of who was playing him. And actually, I used to joke that I blame him for the reason why I kept watching the show. Because I kept, because I was a huge, like I had bought his EP and I loved him, and when he was in Star Kid Potter and all that stuff, and I was like, I will watch the show until Darren leaves the show. And then by about season 4 or 5, I was like, oh my god, leave the show. But yeah, so I really liked his character too, just because I felt connected to the actor that was playing him.
I had a lot of friends after the third season where they graduated, or most of them graduated, I should say.
Right.
At the end of that season, they were like, "I'm done. I'm not watching it anymore. I've got to just take it off," because they never seemed to follow through with storylines or remembered.
Oh, they didn't.
They didn't they didn't follow through with storylines. They forgot about storylines. They forgot that, like, oh, these two characters were friends way back in the day and now they're treating each other like trash again. Or they would set up the most ridiculous storylines and you're like, but I don't understand.
I think it all kind of went downhill because I went back and watched part of the first season a little while ago, and I think, and it's so good. Like the first season and even season 2, I think there were some really good moments because it knew that it was campy and it knew that it was a show about musicals in high school and it knew that it was silly. And I think when it started to go downhill is when it started to, and by it I mean Ryan Murphy, started to take itself seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was when it decided. I mean, there's one thing about providing representation, which is so important, and showing real life situations and being able to discuss them. And then there's feeling like you're the only one that can. You know what I mean? Is it went from showcasing things that kids are really dealing with to being like, we're the only ones that can possibly address this issue. And the show started to take itself so seriously and think of itself as like this paragon of whatever, that it lost kind of that sense of like fun campiness. And then I think that's kind of where it started to go downhill, at least for me. I don't know when exactly in terms of seasons that happened, but that was the sense I got watching season 1, is I was like, oh, this is why it was so good, because they're not taking themselves seriously. Like it's still high quality television, but it's not like the sense of pretentiousness, I guess, isn't there in the early seasons.
Definitely. And like the thing that just always killed me was, and especially with the characters that they had, like they had all of these really dynamic characters at the beginning. And as they progressed, the characters weren't who they were anymore, or they got put on the back burner and never got off. Uh, and like one of those characters, like I really liked at the beginning, I really liked Tina.
Yep.
And for however many years it was, 6 years, Tina never did anything.
No.
And it was so disappointing because as an actress, she's very talented.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, like they gave her nothing to do. Even when Rachel is graduated and there's Tina, and like the next episode, like the start of that season was like the next Rachel Berry.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, here's somebody that realistically should have been, say, like the captain or the leader of the new directions or whatever. And there she goes, shoved to the side yet again.
Yeah. It was a lot of the characters, I feel like, started off kind of well-rounded, and then everyone kind of became a stereotype. And I think that was something else that I noticed, is that, and the other kind of point for me where I was like, all right, this show's done, is they tried to do like an ER kind of thing where they were like, well, we're going to introduce a new cast of characters, and when the old actors all leave, we're going to continue the show. Or like a Grey's Anatomy. I mean, I don't watch Grey's Anatomy anymore. I haven't watched it in years, but like I recognize maybe 2 of the people who were on that show. Right. Compared to, the first couple of seasons, because they've managed to basically kind of introduce enough new characters that then when the old characters leave, the show continues. And I think Glee was trying to do that. I think when they introduced, Melissa Benoist and all the rest of the new like generation. They were trying to set it up so that the show could continue once the originals left. And it just didn't really work. And I think part of the reason why it didn't work is because every one of the new generational characters can be connected directly to an old character. It's
Right.
like they took all the same high school stereotypes and then just like, Marley was Rachel and Kitty was Quinn, and, like they just recast everybody. Ryder was Finn, and whatever the other one was. I forget his name, but Puck's brother was like the Puck
Right.
character, and then they made him his brother, and I was like, okay, well that's just really on the nose. But yeah, it was just they kind of just cast the exact same cast again, and I was like, this, all of your characters, which used to be these really interesting and intriguing and well-rounded characters, you've just reduced all of them to these one-dimensional stereotypes.
And you took the characters that were still existing, like the ones that they didn't graduate,
Right,
like
and
Artie,
yeah,
like
you just
Artie,
replace them.
Tina, Blaine,
Yeah.
like they're still there, but you're like killing their character. Like
Yeah.
second season when they introduced Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Sam was like he is interesting. He is different. Like he liked the country music and all that stuff. Then they made him an idiot.
Yep.
And it's like, what happened to that Sam in season 2? Now Sam is in season 3 or 4, and he's reduced to just being like this wackadoodle.
Well, and that kind of speaks to the same point, because one of the earlier plot lines with Sam is that he was, and it kind of goes along with what your friends were saying about like picking up and dropping off storylines, because I feel the same way. And then in addition to that, kind of just mishandling storylines, because I think one of the things that was, they had a whole storyline with Sam where he was struggling with dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something else that you don't see. People with learning disabilities, if they do get portrayed on TV, it's usually not in a sympathetic or a, well-rounded manner. And so I actually really enjoyed, seeing that storyline play out in a way that, because I've worked with people with learning disabilities, and I was a tutor for a couple of years, and seeing that storyline play out in a sensitive way really meant a lot to me. And then like a year later, it was like, oh yeah, Sam's dumb, and I was like, really? And it didn't. They had this great idea, and then they just reduced it down to like, a comment on intelligence, which it's not, and just completely destroyed whatever character development they've been trying to build there. And they did that, over and over and over again with a variety of characters.
Oh yeah, I think obviously, if they had made like a clean break
Mm-hmm.
and been like, okay, well here's this cast has graduated, they are gone. They may show back up, like
Like they
every
should have done like Glee,
every
the
high
next
school.
generation, and just started the show over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like every high schooler, I imagine, goes back to visit high school
Mm-hmm.
on occasion.
Probably not as
Fine.
much as most of the Glee kids did, but yeah.
Exactly. It's like you're not going to be hanging out in your hometown for the weeks or whatever that is going on unless you didn't, you know, go off to college or whatever. But even then, you're going to be working. You're going to be doing something where you're not dropping in every few seconds and being like, "Hey, I'm back,"
Yeah.
or "Hey, I'm here for a while." So, yeah, it was a tough thing to get through. I still don't understand why I did it, except for by the time that they announced that season 6 was the last season, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll watch it to see what
I think
happens.
that was it for me. Well, I had pretty much I had pretty much decided I was done right before Corey died. Or, the actor that played Finn, right before he died. And so I tuned back, and then they announced they were going to do like the tribute episode and whatever. And I mean, I had invested years of my life into this show. And I was like, when it first started, I was a hardcore, like I went to like I went to like one of those release parties, like where they released the album and you got to meet like most of the cast. So I've met a bunch of them. And just kind of like a, hey, can you sign my CD? It's great to see you. Bye kind of way.
Right.
But like I used to be really, really into the show, and I'd actually met Corey, And he was like this super nice guy and all this stuff. And so, that whole thing was really, really sad. But I was like, okay, I'm gonna tune in for the beginning of this season just to see how they handle this and just to kind of like get a little closure, I guess. And that episode, the quarterback, was an absolutely incredible episode. And I think a lot of it was because I'm sure that like the emotion, what you were seeing, on screen was very similar to what a lot of those people were probably feeling in real life, Leah Michelle especially. But that episode was absolutely incredible. And so I was like, okay, yes, this came out of, this is a special case because it's directly connected to this tragedy. But I was like, but it's clear that this show can still make good television if it wants to.
Right.
And so I
Exactly.
was like, okay, I'm gonna give it another shot. And and then of course it got terrible again. And
Yep.
and then
Yep.
but then they announced that season 6 was gonna be the end, and I was like, okay, I can make it to the end. It's
You can do
almost done.
13 more
Yeah.
episodes. That's
So, but that's what kind of kept me hanging on. Is I was like, I've done this for this long, I might as well finish it out.
yeah, it's nice to go back and see it or like watch some of like the good episodes in those later seasons where you can just kind of pop in and be like, "Oh, I like that music.
Yeah.
Let me watch it. Okay, I'm done.
Right.
I can close it out now." But it's definitely one of the things where it's kind of almost I don't know if you're familiar with a TV show called Heroes.
I watched the first
It's
season and then I give up.
it's yeah, it's very similar to that where the first season was incredible and strong and then subsequent episodes and seasons were just it just went downhill from
I gave
there.
up
And
about 3 episodes into season 2.
yeah, yeah, and then that show suffered from the writer's strike where they had
Right.
to cut the season short. And yeah, it's one of those just tough things where the things that you love just sometimes get messed up.
Hashtag Firefly.
Oh, not we'll have to save that for another
Oh
day
my gosh,
because
yeah.
so as we've mentioned before with Harry Potter and with Pokemon, you are a
I
cosplayer
am.
and you got into it originally with the Harry Potter just casually, and then Pokemon as being Misty was your first
Misty was my
official one.
first, yeah, what I consider my first official one. And it was actually only a year ago. The first time I wore Misty was last year at San Diego Comic-Con. So I'm heading down to San Diego next week for this year's San Diego Comic-Con. So it will officially be my 1 year cosplay anniversary. Yeah, no, I put Misty together just kind of for fun because I've been going to Comic-Con for this will be my 4th year. So I was like, okay, well I'm gonna go anyway. I might as well, it's a pretty easy costume to put together. And I, had friends who were interested in cosplaying or who were cosplaying, and it always seemed kind of interesting and fun. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try this out and see. And it's addicting. Once you get a taste of it, you just kind of wanna keep doing it.
And what cosplays are you currently doing? I know some people debut new ones every convention,
Yeah.
or people have like a rotation of costumes that they go through while they add like maybe one like a new one every year or so.
I'm more of the second. I would love to be able to do a new one every time, and depending on what happens in the next couple of months, that might be more feasible. Because I've been in grad school for 3 years, I was very low on both funds and time,
Hmm.
both of which are very important when you're cosplaying. So I didn't have the opportunity. I mean, I did, I have 5 in rotation that all kind of came about, with the exception of Ginny, all came about in the last year. So I guess, 4 years isn't too bad. But I do know friends that, are constantly cranking out new cosplays, and I think they're absolutely incredible. I'm more of a rotation for now. Once I kind of have a sense of, because I'm kind of in the post grad career search phase, I don't know, where I'm going to be moving. I have things on the table in, different states.
Hmm.
So I don't know where I'm going to be moving, what my schedule is going to be like. I'd like to be able to kind of create new costumes more regularly, but for now, I kind of have my 5 that are in rotation that I kind of bring in and out. I have a 6th one kind of in the back of my brain that I could probably whip up pretty quickly. But for now, it's just the 5. So it's the Ginny Weasley one, Misty, and then I do Black Widow, I do Sansa Stark, and then my most recent one is Rowlet, which is the new grass starter for Pokemon Sun and Moon.
Okay. How do you pick the cosplays that you do? Is it based on the character and your love for the character? Is it something where you like the costume design more so than the character? Is it a mixture of both, or do you just like experiment and try stuff out?
Um, it's a mixture. I think, well, initially I'll say hair color was a big part of it.
Okay.
Because I was very unfamiliar with the whole wig thing, and also because wigs are expensive. Um, so when I first started out, I only picked characters with red hair. Um, but like I said, also, I happened to have most of my favorite characters be characters with red hair, which, again, I will probably need to examine from a psychological standpoint at some point. Um, but like I already had Ginny, and then Misty, and then Sansa and Black Widow are both characters that I really like, who also both just happen to have red hair. So Rowlet was the first one that I did that wasn't a red-haired character. I do have a
Mhm.
blonde wig for that one. So I kind of, eventually I figured out the wig situation, and so now hair color isn't as much of a determining factor. So whether or not I like the character is important. I've had friends be like, "Oh, this is a really cool costume. You should totally do that." I won't do a cosplay from a show that or show or book or whatever that I'm not familiar with.
Okay.
I feel like that's kind of cheating. And then if someone comes up to me and wants to if I'm from like a character in you know oh, I don't know, what's something I don't watch, like if I dress up as like a Naruto character, which I haven't, I'm not familiar with really. And then someone
Hmm.
came up and wanted to talk to me about Naruto, I would just look really, out of place because I would be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
So I tend to pick things that are either characters I really like or that are from shows that I really like. I do tend to want to do characters that I'm comfortable with. And then being able to make the costume is another big thing. I can sew. I have sewn. I'm not the most accomplished sewer. My Sansa Stark cosplay was actually the first time I'd like made like an article of clothing myself. I'd done a lot of sewing in terms of like hand sewing or like sewing straight lines of things, but it was the first time where I like bought a pattern and cut out all the fabric and did everything. And so picking a medieval dress as my first sewing project was probably not the best option. Uh, so I was like, I have no idea if this is going to look good when I'm done or not. I don't know what I'm doing. But it did. It turned out pretty good, so I was really proud of it. And then Rowlet was the first time where I sewed stuff without a pattern. I made the skirt and the hood, just kind of freehanding. I mean, I used a sewing machine, but I didn't have a pattern or anything, so that was kind of fun. But so looking at something and being like, is this something that I'm going to actually be able to accomplish and make it look good? Um, is kind of one of the big deciding factors. The next, I really want to do I have a long list of ones that I really want to do, but the one that's kind of always been poking in the back of my head. Are you familiar with the Fable games at all?
I'm familiar in name only, unfortunately.
Okay, there's a character that kind of pops up throughout multiple Fable games called named Teresa, and she's like a blind prophetess, and she has this really cool like hooded robe thing. And I really would love to try and do her. She's kind of at the top of my want list, but the robe would be very difficult to make. And so I've been trying to kind of like figure out, in my free time, like, okay, how could I actually put this together and make it not look ridiculous?
Right.
So ease of construction is a thing as well, whether or not I'm gonna feasibly with my skills be able to make something and make it look good. Like I don't want to wear something that doesn't look like it was well made, because I want to be able to be like confident of what I'm wearing. So if I don't think that I'm going to, really be able to do it justice, I'll usually put it on hold until I get a little more comfortable with my sewing skills.
Okay. Do you have a favorite cosplay out of the ones that you keep in your rotation? The one that you're like, oh, I get to be this person.
Um, I do and I don't. There are reasons why each one of them could be my favorite. So I guess no is the answer. But Ginny is great because she's kind of the character I feel closest to, and also because it's just like a sweater and jeans. So it's the most comfortable for sure. Misty gets the best feedback from people, especially now that, Pokemon Go is out, but even in general, I think the nostalgia of that one, people really appreciate. Kids really love Misty, which is fun. Same with Black Widow. I was not expecting to get as much attention from kids as Black Widow because I guess I didn't really. I mean, I knew that the Avengers was like in Marvel, I knew it was a thing kids were into, but I was like, these are PG-13 movies. You are 7. What is happening here? But I really like, being able to interact with kids. I mean, I've worked with kids forever, but so getting kids coming up to me as Black Widow is always fun. And plus I get to do really cool poses with her. She's always, like ready for battle. So I'm getting to do all these badass poses and stuff. And then Sansa, Sansa and Rowlet, I think I'm a fan of for the reasons that I already mentioned, is that Sansa was the first one I crafted entirely from scratch. Like I sewed the dress and I put all the trimming on. The neck piece I made myself. So that one was the one that I completely did on my own. And then Rowlet was the first one that I did, freehanding it without a pattern.
Okay.
So yeah, I have reasons why I love all of them.
And if people are looking to find you on the great vast internet, where can you direct them to?
The best place would be Instagram. My handle is ATheatrephilePhile, so ATheatrephilePhile. I have a Facebook page as well, ATheatrephileCosplay. I don't update it as frequently as I should. So that one I mostly use for more like announcements of cool things that I'm doing or cons that I'm going to. Most of my pictures go to Instagram. I have a Twitter. I don't really use it. I think it's a theater file as well, but I am really bad at Twitter. So maybe
Me too.
Don't go follow me there if you actually want to interact with me at all. Instagram is definitely the biggest one, but then I do have the Facebook page as well.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to, throw out there for people? Maybe like recommendations, like definitely check out something that you're into, maybe that we didn't get a chance to talk about.
If you're not playing Pokemon Go, you should do that. I don't know. I'm kind of in like a mid phase of like, okay, I need to go find some more stuff to be into now. Kind of a place in my life. I will say, if you do follow me on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, if you see me at a convention, please come say hi. I've been getting people messaging me a lot saying, oh, I saw you at, at Anime Expo or WonderCon or whatever, but like I didn't want to come up and say hi because you seemed busy. And I was like, no, I really I want to meet people. I love meeting people that follow me. So if you see me at a convention, I will not be upset if you come say hi to. I mean, if you walk up and you're like, hello, I follow you on the internet, then like it might get a little weird. But come say hi. I love meeting people, especially people that support the things that I do. So yeah, I'm always up for that.
I think we are totally out of time. We've probably gone over time, but I don't care. But I just want to say thank you for coming on to this podcast and talking with me about a few fandoms. You have so many more, and as what I've been finding with everyone that I bring on, that there's never enough time to talk about everything.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Well, I appreciate it. Everyone, check out the show links. The links to Caitlin's Instagram and Facebook page will be listed. And Caitlin, just have a great day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.